Okay.
I my skirt.
Sorry.
No, that's right.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay, so the analogy that I always like to make to interpreting is pool, right? If anybody plays pool, you know that there's lots of different games within pool that you can play. You can play 8 ball, 9 ball, straight pool, billiards, snooker, one pocket, bank pool, and the list goes on. Although those are the big ones. So if you ever see on ESPN, and I know you're watching for it, the billiards competitions, right? Because they're so exciting. So you have this guy playing 9 ball, right? Which of course is a little diamond. You start out with 9 balls, and you have to hit them in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can't just hit any ball you want to. And so the first ball you have to hit is the lowest numbered ball. Well, these guys who are playing at a professional level also play billiards, snooker, pocket, bank pool. They play all those games because each of those games makes them better at the game that they really want to specialize in. And this is what I want to say about interpreting. It's the same thing. If I want to specialize in something and I want to say this is what I'm really good at, I better have a good amount of experience in all of these. And as budding interpreters, right, as you decide where you want to be and where you want to work, find out where are those opportunities going to be available to you. Yeah, these two probably not right away, right? But you can do other things, right, to support those other fields that you someday want to be involved in. And so, as an interpreter, right, and I want to be able to, be in all different kinds of fields, I also want to make sure that the skills that I'm building in the field that I'm specializing in is really advancing me as well. Because if I pick a job that's really not advancing my skills, I'm going to find myself very, very far behind. And to be honest with you, I took some time off to have kids and have a family and spend more time at home. I still homeschool my kids. And so I'm not in the field 100% full time. I do a lot of balance and a lot of different kinds of work. But taking that time off has consequences. And so you have to find a way, even if you take that time off, even if you choose to have a family, even if you choose, to explore something else, find a way to keep those skills up because it's really important. This is how I did it when I took my time off is I spent a lot of time doing this kind of interpreting, and these are the kinds of things that I really felt kept my skills up and strengthened me. Your preparation. If there's anything that gets you good at how to prepare and how to pick out important things to interpret, religious interpreting is definitely it because you have a lot of material to go over and to study and how to figure out what it is that you need to emphasize. How are you going to set it up? I mean, there's so many different opportunities to do that within the liturgy, um, within Bible readings and songs. You practice your ethical boundaries. Those can get tested pretty easily on both the hearing and the deaf side. Sometimes deaf people, if you're working, with a particular family, say, we have this really important appointment coming up, and the doctor really doesn't want to pay for an interpreter. Would you just come with us? I really like you, and I just would be really comfortable with you if you would come with us to this important psychological evaluation that the state is going to look at. I mean, really, that's the kind of stuff that happens. And so you have to understand that while I definitely want that partnership, and it's all about partnership with the deaf people and the hearing people in a religious setting, you have to be very, very careful of your boundaries. Hearing people that do the same thing, they try to suck you into what's going on politically at a church level, and yes, there are things that happen at a church level politically, unfortunately. And so they're trying to get you and trying to talk to you about things like that, and the gossip is like, I really am just here to interpret for a little while what's going on in your church. It's not my church, and I really shouldn't be talking about this anyway. So you try to find professional ways to deflect those kinds of things. You're also working with your process. How many of you are process lovers? Betty Clonus, Kish, right. So this is a great way to practice your process because you really have to move in and out of lag time and process time and how you're going to expand, when you're not going to expand, when particular words are important just to fingerspell, and when you have to interpret for them. There's just so many different aspects of your process that are exercised in religious interpreting. It really makes you strong. Performance arts, if you like that, plenty of that. Plays, songs, very animated homilies and sermons sometimes. You're also working with a variety of registers. Sometimes you have somebody, coming up and giving a testimony when it's not that formal and it's very raw and it's very emotional. And sometimes you've got somebody that's maybe a deacon or the archbishop is in town and he's there, and so you kind of have to make yourself a little bit more fancy. So varied registers is something that you also work with. Varied ages. the gamut. You're doing Sunday school, you're doing, last rites, right? You're doing just about everything. Funerals, weddings, you name it, it's available. Also, there's different religions that you sometimes work with. Even if you're working within one particular religion, oftentimes they partner with other churches to do something, and then you have to understand that religion as well. So it behooves you to really study up and get to know the other religions that you're working with that day. You also have varied language. What's the most favorite question? If you have a group of deaf people and they all do something different, what language mode do you pick, right? Is that everybody's favorite question? Right. Of course, my answer is ASL. But what you really have to understand is that there is a variety, of what you see, and then how they talk to one another sometimes is different. So you're going to see deaf people speaking to you in a very, very English way, especially older deaf people, and then all of a sudden they're going to turn to their wife and they're going to turn to their friend, and all of a sudden it's there. And so sometimes the judgments that we make about what language mode we should be in sometimes shouldn't be just what I'm seeing based on my conversation with that person. It needs to be more holistically. But you also get an opportunity to see sometimes I am in straight English because that's really what that deaf person wants. And then there are sometimes I'm with somebody that I probably could use a deaf interpreter with if they would let me. So that's one of the things that you want to keep in mind. It really exercises your transliteration and your English. And voicing. Now that we have deaf leaders, deaf pastors, deaf lay ministers, right? We are getting this amazing opportunity to voice them. We are the voice of these people. And to practice that kind of voicing, you will have a very hard time finding it anywhere else. Even in your regular interpreting, simultaneous voicing is a very, very hard job to find. You don't do it very often. You do it in consecutive, doctor's appointment, right? But there's very few times somebody's up there giving a presentation and you're voicing them on a regular basis. And so what I appreciate about working in this field is I get to do this a lot. And that is a skill that is very much coveted in all settings, very much in religious settings. There's just not enough of us around there to do the regular mass, much less having the skill and ability to voice a priest, to voice a deacon, to voice those kind of things. And so that definitely gives you an edge. So some of the things that keep professionals away from the work of religious interpreting. I kind of outlined these, but you might come up with other ones. One might be that you have to be of the exact same faith. Well, if I'm not Lutheran, I really shouldn't interpret in a Lutheran setting. Or if I'm not Catholic, I really shouldn't be interpreting in a Catholic setting. I started working with the Catholic, it's probably close to 10 years now. It was right after my son was born. I started working in a Catholic setting. And it was very awkward for me when I first, because I wasn't used to liturgy, I wasn't used to the songs. There was so many things that I didn't understand. But I learned, and I studied, and I prepped, and every time I prepped, I gained something different. So you can be of a different faith. Now, when I say a different faith, I think one of the things that's important to remember is that if you have any kind of grudges against a particular faith, for whatever reason, then you really shouldn't. Then you really shouldn't do that, because they will come through in your interpretation. Just like if it's a political presentation, just like if it's a particular rally or whatever. If you really have little or no respect for the particular setting that you're going into, you definitely should not be there. But if you say to yourself, you know what, I'm here because I want to respect that person's right to have access to this situation, and I'm going to do my best as a professional to prepare just like I do with every other job that I would do, right? And you have that kind of respect for the setting, I would welcome you into religious interpreting.
Preach.
Sorry.
My
So,
soapbox. Sorry, I'm done.
for those of us who didn't see what Kate was doing, she was going, yeah. But it's really not about identifying with the faith. It's about having the professionalism and having the willingness to go in there and say, I respect that deaf person. I respect this institution enough to do my best as a professional. Some people say, well, I have to have extensive knowledge of the scripture in order to interpret. One of the things that we know about that is if you work in the freelance field, right? Let's say you decide you're going to be a community-based interpreter, you're going to be going to a variety of settings you may not know what you're going to be going into sometimes. Sometimes you do and sometimes you get the prep, but a lot of times you don't. And so you're going to have to go in cold on a lot of jobs at factories, at particular presentations, sometimes just one-on-one meeting with an employer who's going to be talking with their employee on their job review, and they're going to be talking about all the stuff that happens at your factory. You have no idea what they're talking about, right? That's our job. And so really, religious interpreting is not that much different, except the difference is that we give you everything you need to study and everything you need to prepare, and I've got awesome tools for you guys to feel successful. But the difference is that there is no difference in the fact that it's just like any other field. Sometimes you get the prep, and sometimes you don't. And so it is just as professional and just as difficult as any other field. But what we have to say is some people say, well, I really couldn't do that because I don't understand Scripture. Well, there's lots of tools for you to help you understand what's going on so that's not oftentimes people think it is an unprofessional environment. That would be true. It is not always the most professional environment because oftentimes a church does not understand your role, it doesn't understand your professionalism. Oftentimes they think you're still volunteering. So most people around you think you're just really nice doing this, right? And that's why they go, oh, you're so nice, and all that. So, so few of them really understand that you're doing this as a professional and being paid to be there. And I have to say, I can't remember the last job I did in a religious setting that I didn't get paid for. It's out there. So the ministry leaders understand it. Not everybody around you understands it. And so they will approach you and they will do things. Sometimes they'll say, can I pray with you? Or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of unprofessional aspects to it, but that's changing. And there are a lot more professional aspects coming into it because we are the ones, as professionals, coming in and doing the education. And we're taking it seriously. When we ask for prep and we ask follow-up questions, the more professional we appear. And that's the one thing that people are saying, oh, so this isn't just somebody who's going to move her hands around. This is somebody who's taking her job seriously. And so that's really important. Of course, I think I've mentioned, not true anymore, right? There's still some churches who won't, and that's okay, And that's up to everybody. I'm really not in the business of saying you should always get paid for religious interpreting. I leave that between you and the institution. I recommend, if you really want to donate your services, if you're a member of that church or something like that, and you want to say, I really want to donate my services, ask to get compensated and donate it back, because they need to have something on the papers that say, we need to budget for this. And if they've never spent money on it, they'll never budget for it. And so that is how I recommend we go through the process of doing that. Or give it at a reduced rate, or whatever it is that you want to do it, but on your invoice, you mark it. You send them an invoice, mark it, this is how much it would have cost you, this is how much I charged you, and this is how much you're going to pay me. Or if you do get compensated, you want to give it back, there's lots of different ways to do it. But having that conversation, with the staff and saying, what, this is typically a job that is compensated for. I'm a member of this church, I would like to give because that's what I want to give as my tithe or my offering, right? But find a way to articulate, if I wasn't here, what would you have to do? If I couldn't volunteer that day, what would you have to do? And this is how much it would cost. And that's really important for them to understand. People don't think that we can approach the hearing people, to advocate for their working conditions, and you can. Absolutely. You can approach anybody you need to. Do you always get it? No. Do you always get it everywhere else you go? No. That's life. That's kind of what happens. And that sometimes we just have to have that spirit of flexibility, right? And saying there, it's not always about me. I'm going to advocate for my working conditions. It's part of my professional code of conduct. And if people give you a hard time, you can show them the professional code of conduct that is part of one of the tenets that I advocate for my working conditions to do the best job I can. But at the end of the day, I have to say, there was one job that simply refused to give me a pay. And I knew what it was going to be. It was going to be a guy who was doing this missions talk. He had a heavy Creole accent. And he self-proclaimed that he was a very, very fast speaker. Right? And I asked them if I asked the churches, could I approach him to find out if he has any YouTube videos, if I can, I look for stuff, nothing on him, right? Can I get any information? He obviously has something. He does the same talk everywhere. He has something that he can meet ahead of with me about. No, they were unwilling to do that. And I said that I'm not willing to do it. There are just some times where You have to put your foot down and say, I'm not gonna stand up there and butcher this, you know, and if you're that unwilling to do that for me after I've worked with you for this many years, then you'll find somebody else to do that. And you know what? They did, and it was awful. It was really awful. So I was not interested in being awful that day. And so there are some times you do put your foot down, and there are some times you can be a little flexible. It all depends. You had your hand up.
I was just wondering
Can we switch before you say your question?